Hello and welcome to my new chess video. This game was recently played against a very strong opponent. I played white, opened with e4, black played e5, knight f3, knight c6, and after bishop c4 we had the Italian game. Black plays d6, white plays h3 to protect the g4 square. Black develops his bishop to e7, white castles, knight f6, rook to e1 protecting the center pawn, black castles 2, and white plays c3. A little inaccuracy. Of course the motive is to play d4, protected by the c3 pawn, but black had a little tactic here, which he missed. Black could have played knight takes on e4, and after rook takes on e4 there was this nasty fork. Now the rook has to retreat, and after d takes c4, black would simply be one pawn up, but black missed that, and instead of this tactic, black played knight a5, attacking the bishop. Bishop has to move, bishop goes to b5, a6, bishop a4, c5, attacking the center. White plays d4, and after b5, bishop to c2, we have an equal position. Black decides to play knight c6, but here white can win some space. White can play d5, and now the rook has to retreat. The knight has to retreat, and he goes back to b8. And the problem here is that the rook and the bishop are trapped on the 8th rank. Better was bishop a5, aiming for c4. Anyway, the knight goes back to b8, and white can now break the pawn chain with a4, queen to a5, bishop to d2. Bishop is aiming for the a5 square, attacking the queen. Now b takes a4, c4, discovered attack on the queen. Queen has to retreat to b6, bishop c3, protecting the b pawn, rook to d8, and now white can take on a4, recapturing, and now material is equal. But white has better development, his bishops are more active. White has a semi-open file on the a file, so black decides to trade pieces. So bishop to d7, knight from b to d2, bishop takes on a4, rook takes on a4, rook to d7, rook plans to come to the semi-open b file, and white played queen to c2, making some space for the other rook. The other rook wants to come to a1, doubling on the a file, rook b7, rook from e to a1. Rooks are now doubled. Black plays bishop from f to d7, rook goes from 1 to a2, protecting the b pawn. Now black plays queen to d8, bishop goes to a5, the queen is attacked and has to move again. Queen goes to c8, knight goes to b3, and at this point black has very little space. Most pieces are on the 8th or 7th rank, where white has a good development and much more space. So black again decides to trade with bishop to d8, bishop, knight from f to d2, knight goes to b6, and the rook has to move. Rook goes back to a4, to a3, queen to d7, and now at this point white decided to trade off the bishop against the knight. Rook takes on b6, and the knight goes to a5, probably aiming for c6. Rook goes to b4, knight from d to b3, queen c7, queen c3, queen b6, and now white wants to exchange the rook with rook a4. Rook takes on a4, rook takes on a4, king f8. Now white attacks the pawn, the g-pawn, with queen g3, queen a7, f4, queen to d7, rook to a2, protecting the a-pawn, bishop goes to f6, f5, g6, f takes g6, h takes g6, queen a3, queen e3, queen is aiming for h6, king to g7, g4. That's another mistake by white. We will see that the g-pawn will become weak in the endgame. Bishop h4, knight to d2, f5, g takes f5, g takes f5, queen goes to f3, f4, and at this point white had very little time, so white was playing for a draw by exchanging the queens. That's not the best move. Queen goes to g4 check, and black has to take, so queen takes g4, g takes, h takes g4, and as said, the g-pawn will become a weakness. So knight to d7, and now the next mistake, white knight goes to b7. Sure, white attacks this pawn on d6, but after bishop goes back to e7, this knight has no real purpose. King goes to g2, king g6, king f3, and now rook to b8, attacking the knight and attacking b2. So the knight has to move. Knight goes to a5, rook goes to h8, knight goes to c6. Now check, king g2, rook g3, and white goes to h2. That's also a mistake because the king is now trapped on the a file. He can't really interact with the rest of the board. Better move was to go to f2. Anyway, so king h2, king f6, and at this point white decided to exchange. So knight takes e7, king takes e7, rook takes a6, rook takes g4, rook is going back to a3, rook wants to come to h3, knight f6, rook to h3, f3, rook takes f3, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, and rook takes e4, b3, protecting the pawn, and rook goes to f4, king g3. That's actually a very big mistake, because black could win now by taking the rook. Rook takes f3, and after king takes f3, this pawn cannot be stopped. But black didn't see that and moved his rook to d4. Now the position is equal again. Rook to e3, king f6, king f3, king f5, king g3, e4, pushing the pawn. King has to go to f2, king e5, king e2, king f4, rook goes to h3, king goes to g4, and now we have a repetition and the game ended in a draw.